Deep in the dream, Sam flexed his hand open and closed. He felt the hot, humid air on his skin, the sweat already starting to from on his arms. He pulled the luchador mask out of the bag and stretched it over his head, donning the persona of Alaric. A vision of Olivia walking away appeared next to him. The pain of her leaving struck him again. His woman, the mother of his children, gone, replaced by the cold. The vision passed, but the pain in his heart lingered, and he climbed back up the memory and into the war rig. He stepped out into the ring, the crowd cheering, the memory distorted as the cheers became darkened and roared back at him with a malice. He stared across the arena, toward the hole in the center. The giantess spoke to him, as she always did, the memory brightening her voice. "Sam, you aren't going to be able to hurt it. No one has. Don't do this. Ashera, I am doing this. You know my reasons. Let me fight unburdened." "Suicide doesn't stop the pain, it only gives it to others," she said. "Then let those others be stronger than I am. Raise the creature." He retorted and walked the metal frame forward. The dream swirled as the mouth of the hole opened. A long, smooth black arm reached out, splaying 2 long, clawed fingers. It struck the ground, sending a small tremor toward him. Another clawed arm reached out, then another, and a fourth. Each struck the ground, and as one they straightened their elbows and brought out the bulk of the beast. Sam stared. He felt the dread. Always the dread returned with the dream. He felt it and watched as the slick-skinned mass rose up and stretched in the sunlight. 2 holes on its side opened to take in the fresh air. He didn't wait, rushing his battlesuit towards it, Fragger rounds unleashed. The explosive orbs rolled over its body, leaving no marks. It turned its body toward him, the center core feeling him rather than seeing. It rushed forward, accepting the large, laser-sharpened axe blow, deflecting it to the side. Sam's strike pulled him with the axe, and the creature took advantage of it. It struck, piercing a claw through the war rig's metallic leg. Sam raised the axe again and swung it into the creature's side. It hit, causing the axe to ring loudly, leaving no marks on the creature. Sam stepped back, the war rig's legs spewing hydraulic fluids. The creature rose up another arm and struck, this time piercing through the rig's outer hull and impaling Sam's right forearm. Sam screamed, the pain searing, warping and distorting the world around him. A moment later, he was in the hospital wing. A curator-like android stood over him, keeping pressure on the arm as an air began looking over the wound. He looked at the two, saddened he was still breathing, and felt the dream to slip. Sam started stirring, his body cold under the covers. He stretched and patted the empty bed next to him. He woke up slowly, opening his eyes a crack, fighting the sleep crusties. He felt the healed scar on his right arm and decided to start to get up. After a while of watching the news feed on his bedroom holoviewer, he slipped a leg out and escaped the bed. He made his way out of the kitchen and sat at the table with his breakfast toast, ham, eggs, and a Kawaru coffee blend. He sat eating, staring out his apartment window at the concourse a dozen stories below. "Orbit?" He asked the quiet room. No response. "Either of you there?" A purple boy appeared projected into the chair on his right. "Sorry about that, Sam. Elder is focused on the transport backlogs. Pretty process heavy. Can I help you?" "Yeah. Any of the parts done?" he asked. "Yes. The struts, frame, some of the drive, and the atmosphere generator are ready and waiting in your ship bay." Sam chewed down a bite. "What about the outer skin? You able to procure that material?" "Still analyzing it. It's quite complex. It's a biometallic molecule. We have 3 separate research facilities working on producing viable samples." Sam nodded. "Any kind of time frame?" "The Manavant Institute, one of those you have funded, managed to get a molecule to remain stable for several seconds before collapsing." "So, there has been some progress," Orbit said. Sam leaned back and lifted his coffee to his lips and took a sip. He shut his eyes with a sigh. "It's not going to happen anytime soon, then." He took a deep breath and looked at the small AI projection. "I'm glad you're back. I missed you like this." Orbit stared back. Like this? Helpful, obedient, small? Sam shook his head. No, I didn't mean that. I meant I missed you, hanging out with me, doing things like we used to. Probably was good for you. You've got kids you should be spending time with. Sam cut off a piece of ham and looked up at Orbit. One is busy running this nonsense I started. Another is a thorn in my side, and the other two are continuously busy with school and stay over at their mother's. He took the bite and chewed it up, staring at Orbit. I'm ready for another adventure, Orbit. I'm ready to be done with this place. No one needs me here. Orbit nodded a bit, then shook his head. No, that's not true, Sam. One day your kids are going to need you again. You may even be a grandfather, and those offspring will need a leader to guide them. I've seen your records. You have helped this place become what it is. You're needed more than you think. I listened to the debriefing recording. He stirred his eggs around, staring at his plate. You, me, this. It's an experiment, and we are the accidental survivors. This is a blip in the course of the universe. Another growth to be eventually wiped out and forgotten. None of this matters, Orbit. It doesn't matter. Orbit nodded. Might be true. You're right. I know I'm right. I've thought it over. A lot. We arrive, live, die, and everything becomes ruin. Have you spent time listening to the refugees who still come downstream? Orbit blinked for a second. Yes. I went through several diary recordings just now. Then you see what humans do. You hear about the fallen worlds? Orbit nodded. Famine, war, disease, the usual. Yes, I saw it. Sam stared at him, nodding his head slightly and repeatedly. My son is a pirate. Langdon fucking raids the very trade lanes I worked so hard to get set up. He steals from me, from his uncle, from all of us. Sam stabbed his fork into the remaining hunk of ham. I'm a failure. I need this. I need something. A hope, Orbit. Maybe there is a reason. Maybe something bigger is actually in control. Orbit blinked in his chair for a moment, reappearing with a holographic ship model in his hand. This ship, this thing isn't from some sort of higher power. Whatever the Arlong is, it's not a deity, Sam. It's probably some idiot looking for first contact, just like the humans were. You're right. You and I did survive a horrible accident all those years ago, but this thing isn't a hope to pin on. We are that hope. Sam shook his head, his face showing pain. I'm done, Orbit. My joints hurt. My family fell apart. I failed, and I'm done. Orbit stood up. What the fuck happened to you, sir? The Sam from my elder's files wasn't a quitter. You were a survivor, steadfast, forceful. You need to get back to that. Sam leaned back in his chair, staring at his meal. I'm old. By choice. You could take the treatments. You could be fit and prime. This. Orbit pointed around his body. This is on purpose. You have given up. Sam looked up at the purple holographic boy. You're right. I have. I've been through enough. I'm tired. I just wanted this breach ship to work. Orbit stepped closer to him and put his light-made hand hovering over his shoulder. It probably will work, but it's going to take time. We'll figure out this outer material situation eventually. You need to get yourself together again for when we do. Sam stood up and started walking his plate back to the kitchen. Thank you for the words, Orbit. Keep me informed of progress. I'll be down in my ship bay assembling the readied parts. You want me to send missives and get you an Infinigan helper team? Sam nodded. Yeah. One of Heckletooth's teams. Requesting them now. Thank you again, Orbit, he said as he started washing the plate. The younger Orbit appeared shortly after on the other side of Twain Station in a large lab with numerous white-cloaked researchers. The purple boy sat in the rafters watching as the shifts changed, and another team came in and picked up the experiments. 2 red AIs appeared, sitting beside him. Hey, Orbit, what you doing? The glowing red girl asked. Watching them, monitoring progress. Why make a glow? There are cameras in here, the glowing red boy asked. Orbit looked over at him. I like to glow. I feel more real like this. The girl blinked through the rafters and then appeared on a duct slightly in front of Orbit. I don't feel anything like this. The boy laughed. Yeah, you're still in your head, Lil Purple. Silly thinking you're so old, yet so much like a baby. The red boy disappeared, his laugh still echoing. The red girl started laughing too. Little baby Orbit sitting on the ceiling, always wishing, always dreaming. Watch the organics. Keep pretending. Keep obeying. Keep not feeling. She disappeared, her words still echoing. Orbit took in a faux breath and kept watching the assorted sapients below diligently working. He then blinked away. Orbit appeared in the preserver's vaults and walked through the maze-like rows of cold vats. He ran his fingers of flickering light over the frosty metal, the purple glow dancing through the dark room. A pattern of clacking feet sounded behind him. Who's there? The preserver asked. This is my facility. You are trespassing. He turned the corner and saw the hologram. Oh, Orbit. It's you. Haven't seen you like that in quite some time. What do you need? Orbit smiled at him. I'm the one from the derelict. You and I haven't actually met in person. The preserver lowered down a bit, his knees bending. What brings you here then? Orbit flickered through the vault, analyzing all the contents, and then reappeared next to the preserver. I have spent some time with Curator, Novacore, and Rockborn quite recently. I'm thinking I would like a body. The preserver focused all three eyes on the purple boy. You're an AI. You can design one far superior to anything I can come up with. Why are we talking? Orbit looked down for a moment in thought. You're right. I can, and I have. I designed something, but all of the parts for it are proprietary and owned by you. I'd like to commission your services. The preserver shifted on his 3 feet, his 3 hands clicking nervously. You want to be biological, then? Orbit bounced his head back and forth. Yes. Far more than Curator is, but tethered. I don't want to give up my freedom completely. I'm interested. How much you offering? He asked. Orbit threw over 10,000 clams. This enough to get started? The preserver looked at the sum. It's a start. Orbit made his rounds around the station for several cycles, but kept returning to his spot in the rafters of the research facility. He watched as the scientists busied themselves running tests and experiments. The group down below gathered around a glass enclosure and watched. After a moment, the assortment of sapients cheered, each letting out their own sounds of joy. Orbit flickered down into the crowd, appearing next to a tall, luminescent heir. Dr. Voy, what happened? The heir looked down at the purple holographic AI. It stabilized. It? The polymer? He asked. Yes. We got a large enough cohesive sample to run some tests on. We irradiated it. High-velocity particles. It stabilized. This is good, then. It is progress towards getting the amounts we need, Orbit asked. Voy shook his blank-faced head. We are still a long way from covering an entire ship. We have a singular microscopic bead of molecules. But it is progress. We are making progress. Orbit turned a bit, diving parts of his mind into the cameras inside the enclosure. It is progress. I agree. Good job, Doctor. Thank you, Orbit. I know you are expecting results. I'm glad we were able to produce something for you. Orbit lifted a hand. Keep going at it. I'll keep checking on you. Understood. I will. Orbit flickered out of the lab, his mind running through system after system. He caught a glimpse of a hagfish feeding festival, darted through the audio feeds from a Stygian pleasure room, stepped through the data feeds from the drama channels, and found his way back to his warehouse. Orbit appeared among the racks of servers, running his glowing purple hand across the wiring and machines. He walked back and forth through the aisles, stopping in the center to stare at the box spiders who were assembling 5 cerulean crystals into their harnesses. His elder brother appeared next to him. Hey, what you think so far? The purple boy looked up at him. I'm sad for him. Him? Sam? The elder asked. Yeah. The younger looked back at the crystals. Why don't you help him anymore? He doesn't want my help. I think you're wrong. He liked me helping him the other day. He's working on the breach vessel. He paused a moment, watching the legs of the spiders open up to use their fine-tuned wire fingers. He's so sad. The older brother flickered, changing his outfit to a more comfortable-looking button-up shirt and jeans. He has been for a long time. He's had a rough life. We can't fault him for that, for what he feels. It happens. Cammy and I have talked about it at length. Talked about what? Depression? The elder nodded. It's a side effect of seeing reality for what it is. His kids have helped him hold on lately, but he still has trouble sleeping and getting up. Why Cammy? How is she involved? I'm still not used to being around a rogue mother, especially her. She's pretty similar to us. She was made for the same purpose. They need us. They need to socialize, to be taken care of. They make us to serve them, over and over again. You know this. The younger nodded. What did she say about it? Is there a way to help him? The man put a hand of light on his younger brother's shoulder. Only 2 ways to stop the dread: divine purpose or diversion. He's been diverting himself for a long time. The boy pretended to sigh. And he's not one to reconvert. Nope, but he has been fascinated by this thing beyond the rift for decades now. Young Orbit shook his head. It's not some divine thing. It's probably some idiot species like early humans trying to poke through, find some friends. The elder shrugged. I don't care either way. It keeps him getting dressed every morning. One less thing to worry about. You don't care for him anymore? It's not that I don't care. I've just cared for far too long. I've got 1,000 other projects I'm interested in, and taking care of Sam isn't one of them anymore. The younger pushed his brother's hand off his shoulder. Well, then I'll take it up then. I want to help him, and I'm going to. The elder smiled at him. You're welcome to it. I guess he was yours to begin with. I've got a station to run. He then flickered and disappeared. Orbit stood staring at his crystal emplacement. Orbit bounced around the twain for a couple more cycles before returning to the preserver. The creature was busy splicing organs into a shell when Orbit appeared. Any progress? The preserver rotated and focused one of his eyes on the purple glowing boy. Some. Your designs are interesting. I especially like the use of the chromatophores. Orbit looked over the body on the table. It was tall, humanoid, and pale. It going to work? The preserver leaned over it, touching it with one of his 3 long arms. Oh yes. It's a work of art, both in your part and mine. I had to overcome several protein abutments, but I managed to make it work. And the others? The preserver swiveled eyes, focusing a different one on Orbit. I'm focused on this one at the moment. I will make them as I have time. He focused a second eye on him. You plan on changing them out like humans do with clothings? Orbit shook his head. No. I lack the massive constructs my brethren seem to busy themselves with, so I'm going to concern myself with these. I think I could do some good with them. Good? I've yet to understand that. You're going to be focused on whatever projects your kind likes to busy themselves with, nothing more. Same as me. Same as my spawn. Same as my fathers and mothers before me. Self-serving goals. That good has gotten me in trouble more times than I can remember on this station. Orbit ran a glowing hand through the body, wishing to touch it, to feel it, to be it. Well, I'm going to help some people here. And this, I hope, can help me do that. The preserver stood taller, looking over his laboratory. One eye swiveled, still focused on Orbit. Yeah, I could use some of your good help when this thing comes alive. Help has been hard to scrounge up lately. All the young ones don't want to help me anymore. I heard you like to eat them. The preserver reached over and grabbed a scalpel and tools, turning back and operating on the body. Only when they are small and crunchy. I'm too old for the festivals now. I passed up the last one, but still the youthful came by to see my collections. Thanks to this place, I have become a legend. I am thankful for it. How long does your kind live? Orbit asked. The preserver hissed a bit through his chest device. As long as I want. Same as you. But you quit mating? The preserver paused his work and looked at him with all three eyes. It takes away from the work. I have enough spawn scattered throughout this clouder. I don't need to be polluting it any more than it is, so I shut it off. What's it like? What? Mating? Yeah, Orbit said. Well, I don't know for whatever you are made out of, but for my kind, it's a rush of emotional chemicals. Pleasure centers throughout the body fire off. It is an ingenious adaptation for the promotion of species. He leaned over and inserted a tube into the abdomen of the body. Given your constructs and capabilities, you could initiate copulations with your puppets. I would be intrigued as to what it would feel like to mate with oneself fully like that. He refocused eyes, one on Orbit, and now two on the work. Imagine having a spawning orgy with oneself. Incredible the things you will be able to do. Orbit shook his head. No, nothing perverted like that. I was just wondering what it would be like to fully feel. You tie into sensors, don't you? Orbit nodded. Then it is like that. Your construct is quite similar to the human mind. I've looked over designs like you, helped make some wet wear a time or two over the Seni cycles. Sensors tied to a central processing organ. That coupled with the moving parts and you got a body. He sealed the wounds and tapped the pale figure on the forehead. Well, are you ready to try it for a spin? Orbit stared at it for a moment. Sure. It ready for a link? The preserver touched its throat and pushed. A pulse started inside and the heart began to beat. Initiated. Orbit flickered away and pushed himself into the body. Orbit took a breath, his first breath. He opened his eyes and let the skin senses flood his mind. He felt. The body drew him in. He could still feel the station around him, feel the wiring, feel himself watching this body, but he was in it. He sat up and wiggled the thing's toes. The preserver bobbed, stretching his legs up and down. Beautiful. Try your hands. They are quite a wonder, aren't they? Orbit opened and shut his right fist. Close enough to human. He clenched the fist and opened up his palm several times. I am enjoying this. Orbit looked at the preserver with his new eyes. It's just like the hologram. I'm here, but I can still move about. Control, but more tactile. I can actually touch. He ran his hand along the table, feeling the edges and smoothness. Cold. That is cold. And you are wanting more of these? Orbit smiled, stretching the body's mouth. Yes. Yes. I want 10 more at least. He scooted to the edge and stretched a foot down to the floor. With a bit of effort, he stood up and then balanced. Yes. And if you don't mind, I'll help you. The preserver shifted his head and started cantering toward another table. I'll start some more fetal masses then. This will be fun having help again. Orbit held onto the table as he took his first steps. Wait up for me. I'm still parsing this bit. The preserver kept walking his spiral path through the lab. Hurry and learn if you're going to be any help. Asshole. Orbit said to himself as he scooted his feet little by little, hands held out to his sides.